Hi, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Walters Wanderings Travel Podcast. And with us today is the one and only Mark Murphy, travel guru, man about town, bon vivant, and a man that does not lack for opinions. Did I get it all right, Mark?
Except the last part.
All right, never an opinion from Mark. But anyway, he was my guest on my very first podcast, and I appreciate him coming back because this is sort of like one of those the more things change, the more they remain the same, or the only consistent these days is change. It's just crazy. And Mark is going to help sort some of it all out with his obviously cogent and analysis and everything else that goes with it. So I guess Mark, let's start with since last we were on almost a year ago, what in the travel industry has actually become better?
Um, well, I guess the fact that people are actually moving and airline travel is up, except for Southwest Airlines last weekend and continuing into this week. So, so to me, it's slowly come back. Um, but what's happening is destinations, travel suppliers, et cetera, are either putting in obstacles to travel like requiring a negative PCR test or requiring quarantines or saying only vaccinated travelers can travel, ignoring the actual science of things like natural immunity. And, it's funny, people see me being very outspoken on social media, on TV, commenting on this stuff. Yeah, I am outspoken. And then they throw the, you're an anti vaxxer. Why don't you just get vaccinated? And I have to laugh because I've got four people in my family, my wife, me, and my two kids. 50% of us are vaccinated, 50% aren't. And there's a reason why only half of us are vaccinated. And my kids are adults. I'm an adult. And I'm not going to have the travel industry or anybody else tell me or my family what they need to do in order to, quote, comply or submit in order to enjoy a vacation. They can go get you know what. And that's, to me, it's a form of apartheid. It's a form of exclusion. I mean, let's just look at New York City. New York City has a vaccine passport. It's killing the restaurants. It's killing small business. Like they haven't done enough to screw up New York City over the last, 20 months. They have destroyed New York City's tourism. They've destroyed it for people like me that own property there. Thank God I'm selling my apartment right now. Got it under contract. Losing lots of money on it as a result of these policies. But I can weather that. A lot of people can't. I sold my company. I was fortunate that I sold it about 3 months before we started hearing about COVID. Had I not, my company would be a real challenge to sell. And I think my staffing that was around 50 employees full time when I sold is probably around 10 today. I don't know the exact numbers, but I know it's a dramatic drop. And unfortunately, it's a direct result of the policies that have made the cure worse than the actual disease. And when people say, oh, how can you say that? I point to the UN study that just came out on Southeast Asia, where they expect 239,000 child deaths. We're not talking up to 18 years old. We're talking young children as a result of COVID policies. And if you take that and extrapolate that around the world, you've got more deaths just in kids in third world countries and poor nations than you have in the totality of so-called COVID deaths, because we also know that they have misreported those numbers in the US and abroad. And now they're starting to make some of those adjustments. I don't want to get into the weeds on it, but we noticed out of a county in LA, they dropped the count by 25%, the total death counts. We know that when the CDC was asked a year ago, what percentage of COVID deaths are COVID like cause, like only COVID? They said 6%. So, have they come out with anything since then? Nope. Are they talking about natural immunity? Nope. But unfortunately, if you talk about travel, I think travel, I wrote a book called Travel Forward, because travel, the concept of the book was use travel as a metaphor to move your life forward. You could walk around the block and travel forward, or you could get on a plane and go see the pyramids. They're both travel forward moments. But the problem is an industry that has talked about inclusiveness and going out against the whole anti, um, you know, like there's some destinations where it wasn't safe for gay travelers, even to this day, to go. And we've been big proponents of this inclusivity, yet those same people that pushed for that are now saying you can't travel unless you get vaccinated, despite your medical situation, despite your natural immunity, despite anything else. And that's just not science. It's not inclusive. It's medical apartheid. I'm disgusted with it. And I speak out, and it's cost me hundreds of thousands of dollars just this year alone in engagements that I would have been involved in because I might be too controversial. Well, F that. I don't really care. You can have the money. You can basically go do whatever the hell you want. I'm not going to sit back and let the Twitter crowd, which is about 3% of the population, and it's a cesspool, drive media and drive decision making in travel. And I'll do my damnedest to be a voice of reason. I feel like I'm on an island. I feel like a lot of people in the travel industry are afraid to speak up. And I've got a story about Southwest Airlines pilot for you that talks directly to that.
Well, we'll get to Southwest in a second because obviously that's an evolving situation, and I think it's going to end up being very eye-opening when all is said and done. There's no doubt about that. Yep. But you do bring up an interesting point in that there are obviously some people in the travel industry, be it people that lobby for travel, people that are even suppliers, people that write for travel, people who do all kinds of things that are, kind of are more hesitant maybe about travel than you or I, or anyone else that has a modicum of, of sense. Here's one example where the travel, where part of the travel industry is really, really acting completely without merit, and that is all the major airline aircraft have been retrofitted to have air recirculate and be fresh and new every 3 minutes, which for a vessel of that size and that amount of cubic feet is really remarkable. I mean, I wish my house could recirculate air every 3 minutes, and it's got about the same square footage as a standard fuselage of a 707, a small jet. But yet, the airlines are still kowtowing to those who say you have to wear a mask, even though the circulation is such that every 3 minutes you're getting absolutely brand new air from places in the atmosphere where we know the air is going to be fresher and it's already been HEPA filtered and all of that. And it's obviously because of the fact that the airline, because they needed or allegedly needed a bailout and got a bailout, they're not going to kowtow and say, they're not going to become Rosa Parks and say, no, we're not going to do this. And that's really irritates me. It irritates me that people go out and they choose and hobnob with people who are anti-business and anti-travel on a regular basis, and want to curry their favor whenever it's truly about principle and not about politics. And I think what happens is people get the politics in the way, and it's a real pain in the butt. There's no question about it. Now
there's no reason. So you made a great point. So the airlines, if you go to the airline websites, they talk about the HEPA filters. They talk about the 2 to 3 minutes to entirely recirculate the air. The fact that it removes 99.99% of all viruses in the air. We now know that it's an airborne virus. It's particles that build up. That's how you get sick. It's not somebody technically coughing on you. Theoretically, that could, if you got sprayed on, of course. But what the cause of people getting sick is when they're in a confined space without circulation, somebody's infected and they keep breathing out particles. The mass of particles get to a critical point where they're dense enough and there's enough there to infect people. That happened in my house. And the reason it happened in my house is because we had air conditioning on, because unlike you in the Northeast, our flu season, if you would, our spike is going to come in the summer months because that's when people are inside because of the heat. You are going to be inside because of the cold, and you're going to see your spike, and you're already seeing it in Pennsylvania, I haven't seen reports from New York, but definitely in Pennsylvania, Michigan, and other Montana, other northern states in our country. And so you can't say out of one side of your mouth in the airline industry, oh yeah, we got this great filtration system. And they even illustrate what it does is it takes the air and it pulls it down. So it's not blowing this way or this way. It pulls it down. And as it pulls it down, that's when it gets recirculated through the filters, comes back out the top, back down again. So they give us these illustrations to make us feel confident and comfortable about flying, yet we're wearing masks that are the equivalent of using a hockey net to keep the mosquitoes in the summer from coming through my window if it's open. Okay, that's how effing dumb this is. And no one's calling them out. And I've actually called out the leaders in the travel industry, whether it's cruise lines and Frank Del Rio. You know what? I'm sorry, you're wrong. You are completely wrong. You are ruining the industry. And there are people that are so disgusted. I'm one of them. I've been to 80 countries. I will not get on another plane. I will not go anywhere if there's any kind of mandates that I'm required to live by. I will adjust my life as a guy who spent his entire adult life traveling. I will say, okay, you want to impose this type of mandate on me? I'm out. And I guarantee there's 100 million more people like me in the US who will not travel. And then take those kids, now I got to mask my kids. Forget it. I'm getting thrown off planes if I have a 2-year-old who fusses about wearing a mask. Who needs that? Travel is not about increasing your stress level. It's about lowering your stress level.
Exactly.
But unfortunately, Southwest with I think their BS over the weekend, they create a lot of stress for people. I know for me, it was a pain. It was very expensive. And they're like, oh, it was weather. It was ATC. And I'm thinking to myself, there's absolutely no way. And here's the thing about Southwest. My plane, they said it's an ATC issue. My plane was at Nashville Airport. The inbound flight had come from LaGuardia. I could see in a market like New York on a Friday night, it could be a little crazy. The plane might not get out. ATC may slow down arrivals and departures. That wasn't the case. The plane was there. They didn't have the crew. They said it was ATC. They didn't have the crew. So they couldn't fly me to Fort Lauderdale. And you know what? People are pissed off beyond belief right now. And the ones who say, oh, get over it, well, they're the ones sitting on their fat arses telling us to get over it. That's the problem.
Yeah, and I think the Southwest thing is it. I think it's going to probably spread to other airlines. I think what it is there's probably rolling out and Southwest, because it is a budgetary airline and it's more of a family-oriented airline, and obviously business travel is still not up where it used to be. But
Right.
you have a lot of families going to places like Orlando. All those flights to Orlando getting canceled. All those
Yep.
flights to Fort Lauderdale getting canceled. All those family-friendly type places is actually sending a message, or at least you would think it would be, but not everyone has caught on and understands the fact that when it comes to these kind of things, and pilots and air staff and others that aren't wanting to take the vaccination for whatever reason. And guess what? In my opinion, it's nobody's business why you don't take something. Just like it's nobody's business why you do take something.
Right.
I have people who've gotten the third shot, and it's like, okay, good for you. That's great.
Who cares? I don't care.
It's fine if that makes you feel good. Then go ahead, get a fourth, get a fifth. I'll grab my fifth from the liquor cabinet, and then there you have it. I mean, it's just that simple. So I think people, when it comes to these delays and these hindrances to travel, I think there are going to be many more people who want to do other travel, but there's a rub in that too, and that is we have all of the rising fuel costs. So anyone who wants to go ahead and fuel up with regular gas or diesel in a rental RV or in a van or whatever, they're getting the shaft too. So it's really going to become like a house of cards here, I think. Soon enough.
So energies, and I'm a big investor in energy. So if you actually want to look at what's going on, I was going to post this, but I'll give you a little preview. If you look at energy costs, right around the time of the election, energy prices went through the roof. Why'd that happen? Like literally it started to creep up just before the election, and then it's gone hog wild. It's been the best performing asset for the last, 10 months or so, 11 months. Why is that? Well, when Biden ran, he said he was going to ban fracking. But then when he was asked in places like Pennsylvania, he said, oh, I'm not going to do that. He was lying because out one side of his mouth, he was telling he was going to ban it. But then when he got called on the spot in key battleground states that rely on it, he said, no, we're not going to do that. Well, of course, he immediately did that. I'm an investor in actual oil wells. I know how fracking works. I know that when you tell people that you're not going to allow them to drill on federal lands, like in New Mexico, the people in New Mexico who overwhelmingly voted for Biden were like, oh, hold on a second. What do you mean? 40% of the state's revenue comes from those leases. Maybe you should have thought about that before you elected the guy because you voted for him. And so it has a cascading effect. So what happens is, let's talk about the cascading effect, costs. So as the airline costs go up, right? So here's what's going to happen. Fewer pilots, fewer crew, right? Higher costs of operating. Fuel is their number one cost, typically
Sure.
on flying a plane, right? So if the cost of fuel, if they didn't hedge, it's doubled in some cases, their cost of jet fuel. Okay, how does that work out? Well, if you pay attention over the years to what's happened in markets like Mexico when they got hurt with crime waves, et cetera, and business was down, the airlines would take flights off. If you take flights off, you have fewer flights, demand may stay up, or you lower the flights below that level so demand exceeds supply, prices go up. So the airline ticket prices go way up. And that's what you're going to see. So you're going to see airline ticket prices going way up as travel demand continues to rebound. You're going to see fewer flight options. You're going to see more cancellations. To your point, you're going to see more of these crews and other folks at United and these other airlines who are sucking up to this administration that's destroying their own industry between the high fuel costs and everything else. I mean, let's ask yourself a question. If it was all about fossil fuels, why are we asking OPEC to increase production while we kill domestic production in the United States? It makes absolutely zero sense for anybody who doesn't want to be political about it. He came in, he said he was going to do it. He actually did what he said he's going to do. The repercussions are there. I'm benefiting tremendously as an investor. So it's been a godsend for my portfolio. I mean, I'm not even exaggerating. I've made more money on investments in the last 12 months, 10 months, than I made in the last 3 years running my company. My company was very successful. So, it's remarkable. I can sit in my house, do a couple hours of work, here and there on my investments, and then go out and enjoy the canal, go out to the intercoastal. So if I want to go boating, go paddleboarding, ride my bike, I'm down to like the 4-hour work week, literally. And it's all a result of these policies that keep destroying an industry, in my opinion, with the help of folks in the industry either remain silent or slamming DeSantis for getting rid of vaccine passports. So to follow through on the whole, like the cascading, so you have higher ticket prices. So the hotels are going to lower their prices because they're going to be pressured in order to bring the overall package price to a number that the consumer can swallow. As we know, in some cases, and people may not be aware of this, American Airlines and other carriers have gotten incentives from destinations where they've subsidized flights so that the airline to put on flights to go to a certain destination, Jamaica, Cayman Islands, wherever, they would put those flights on, but they would have a guaranteed baseline backed by that local government. So you're going to see more and more of that going on. The hotels and resorts are going to get hurt as a result of this because their margins are going to get squeezed like they've gotten in the past. And at the end, you're going to have fewer people traveling. You're going to have more hurdles to travel. That's why we say don't do exit taxes, don't do these visas. If you can be visa free, it's so much better, because the more things you put in front of the traveler that makes it more difficult to go, the fewer people will go. And, taxes on travelers coming to your place is a great example, because taxes like sin taxes, they put them on alcohol, they put them on cigarettes to do what? So they get less of that particular activity. So if you want to tax travel more, you're going to get less of it. If you want to put hurdles in, you're going to get less of it. And then think about the tour guides, the concierge at the hotel, the maids at the hotels, the Uber drivers, the taxi drivers, the restaurants in the destinations. Doesn't matter whether it's domestic or U.S. Travel has gotten crushed. And unfortunately, I don't see an end in sight to the tyrannical policies that have gotten us here.
It's really difficult because, and the other thing, from a travel advisor point of view, whenever the airline rates go higher and then they have to squeeze down the price on the hotel, since there's no commissions anymore for airline flights unless there's some kind of bulk rate consolidator thing, guess what? Since the hotel rate's going to get squeezed down in order to still entice people to travel, the poor travel advisor, me, my my pixie dust of 10% is going to be even less, and all trips will end up being a commission level like trips that I book out for people to Vegas. I
Right.
mean, just
Yeah,
like
you make
that
no
because
money. You make nothing.
so
Well,
it's really difficult, and like I say, we don't know. We know, like, for example, cruising is back, but we know there are restrictions on cruising that are keeping some people from going, but other people are still going without a hesitation because they love cruising so much it doesn't bother them, or it doesn't bother them enough, I suppose. And we do see a resurgence of cruises, which I think is good. I think
well,
that's
hold
going to
on a
be
second.
helpful.
Think of the demographics of cruises. Outside of like a Disney cruise or like a summer cruise, where kids are off, what percentage of your customers are 60 or 65 plus?
Well, again, the cruise lines definitely do cater that way, and they do skew
Correct.
that way. A lot of them. I mean,
All right, so
let's face
follow
it.
this thought. So think about this. So if the average cruise, I mean, we know the average age of cruisers has been high. They've been able to bring it down by enticing families to vacation, trying to get younger people. The Virgin cruise, is guaranteed is designed to bring in sort of that hip younger crowd, right? So you have all of that. The problem you have, so right now in the cruise industry, who are they catering to? The 65 plus market, 60 plus market, pick whatever you want, whatever age. That is the age that has the tendency to be vaccinated. So, okay, great. So they're aligning their policies with these vaccine policies with what? The current demographic. But what is the goal of the cruise lines been for a couple decades now? Bring down the average age. Someone like me, I'm only 58, but I'm a young 58. I'm not overweight. 80% of people dying from COVID are either overweight or obese. I have zero comorbidities, zero. I don't take any medication for high blood pressure, for diabetes, for any of these other heart issues. I have none of them. I was literally in the middle of my workout to come down and do this. I've already biked for 30 minutes. I'm going to go back upstairs and probably work out for another 30 to 45 minutes. And I do this every single day. If I don't do it, I feel strange. That's just been my MO for years. So to force me to get vaccinated in order to go on a cruise, well, I'm not doing it. And I've been on, gosh, I mean, dozens and dozens and dozens of cruises. And I think it's a stupid policy. And I think in the long term, it hurts their ability to expose that product to a younger demographic. And, so now if they approve vaccines down to like age 5, God forbid, despite the fact that Iceland has banned the Moderna vaccine completely, Sweden, Norway, and Denmark said no Moderna vaccines for anyone 30 and under. I'm like, yeah, because we're learning there are side effects, and we shouldn't be learning it as guinea pigs in a process. We should have known this before they authorized it, but it was this big rush to get this thing out. And to be frank, if I have kids and they can't participate in things because, oh, now it's 5 and up, but if they don't get the vaccine, they can't do certain things on our cruise, then F the cruise lines. Don't go. You know what? They're a national park. You got to book them in advance. There's camping trips. You can do what I did as a kid. We would get in our car and we would drive from Philadelphia to Chicago, and we'd stay at the freaking Marriott Hotel out at the airport. And it had an indoor-outdoor pool and an outdoor pool. And that was my 2-week summer vacation because I was born in Chicago and they moved us when I was a year old. And we had 4 kids within 5 years. So we'd pile into the station wagon. And I don't know how my parents thought that was vacation, but at least they got to see family and friends after, driving 2 days to Chicago and overnighting at the motel, whatever it was back then. Some version of the Motel 6 or Red Roof Inn. It was not luxury travel. And so to me, I think you're driving a lot of people to do that. And then the other thing to think about is the economics. So who's getting killed in this whole scenario? Lockdowns, mandates, everything else. Small business. So you're the smallest of small business. But the guy who's got a retail store, right? He was forced to close in some states for months and months and months. While what? Amazon, Walmart, Home
Oh yeah.
Depot. I mean, so what's happened in this 20-month fiasco is small businesses have got destroyed, they continue to get destroyed. So if I want to be like, thinking, what are these larger players in the industry, travel industry thinking? Well, maybe they're thinking, well, it helps to clean out the second tier operators, et cetera, that compete with me. And therefore I can consolidate more market share going forward. Could they be thinking that? I'm sure those conversations have taken place. That would be capitalism, business 101, but with a big assist from public so-called health experts who have done 180s throughout this entire so-called pandemic, where we have a 99.9+% survival rate for anybody without comorbidities, who's not a fat fuck, who's up there, I got cursed, and who's not a fatso, and who doesn't have an average of 4 comorbidities and a median age of 80, which is beyond the life expectancy of Americans today.
Yeah, listen, there's so much hyperbole and there's so much contrarianism that's going on in thought that you would think that some of the places that you think should have been open, like gyms, like other health places, like small businesses, because again they do provide the backbone of jobs. They should have been open, and again it should really boil down to people's choice. Like if a business is going to
Right.
say, if you need a mask to go in or whatever, then if you don't want to go, you don't have to go. And just like
Correct.
the contrary, if a business says, we would prefer that if you want to wear a mask, go ahead, but we're not wearing masks. That's
Yep.
then it's a people's choice. And I think what's really is gets stuck in my craw is the fact that we're losing the ability to make these kind of informed choices, and to be able to actually have freedom of movement. I mean, look, my Costco in New York finally got above $3 a gallon for gas. So, which, and it's, trust me when I say that the Costco here in New York is actually cheaper than many places in New Jersey, which is actually a stunning development.
That's unusual, yeah, with the
It's a
taxes.
stunning
Yeah.
development because New Jersey just a couple of years ago put in new gasoline taxes and actually raised their price to end up being higher than a place like Costco. But my point is that we're all getting squozed, a bit by bit, and inflation is like the worst tax of all because
Hmm.
it hits the people at the bottom the most because they have less
Yep.
money to spend, and there's less disposable income, and there's even less non-disposable income because for many people, especially when you're in the suburbia areas and places like that, you don't have a choice to take a mass transit at a subsidized reduced cost. You have to take your car, and all those intended costs for using your car are much higher. So it's really really tough. So for 2022, what do you see on the horizon? You look at Mark Murphy has his crystal ball out. What do you see happening over the landscape in 2022, both travel and the policy that affects travel kind of paradigm?
Well, I think it's going to hinge. So, think about the awakening that took place in the Mideast under Obama, where people were crying out for freedom, and we as a country kind of turned our backs on the Middle East and some of those countries where people were rising up. In case in point, Iran. Well, you know what's interesting? What's going to happen is, in my opinion, you're going to see more and more of these sick outs, whatever you want to call it. They say the pilots union at Southwest Airlines did not organize anything, but we can't control what individuals do. Basically, what that's saying is it's not organized, but people are going to do what they're going to do.
The old
I
wink, wink,
believe,
nod, nod.
I believe that more and more people are going to say enough is enough. If you are an American and you believe in personal liberty, personal freedom, the freedom to choose what goes into your body, remember, my body, my choice. The people that are screaming the loudest right now today are the ones that's about everyone's got to get vaccinated. No, I don't need to be vaccinated. I don't. My risk of an adverse reaction from the shot, given the fact that I'm healthy at 58 and I have no comorbidities and I am at a perfect weight and body mass index for my age, I'm good. Add in natural immunity from previous infection, zero need. My doctor here locally says you don't need it. She said don't get it even before I got infected. And then I still wasn't eligible in Florida to get it. But, you know, when that did come around, I had already had COVID. And then when I went up to Sloan Kettering, you know, in July, I was told, oh yeah, we want everyone to get vaccinated. That's like the general thing. Well, I won't expose the person, but somebody there who also was previously infected, who works for Sloan, came over to me and said, you don't need the vaccine. You don't need it. I don't need it because I was previously infected. I have high antibodies. They do my blood work every 6 months. They're like, you're great. You don't have to worry about anything. But it's still like, oh, well, you know, the mandate is this. And what people don't realize is whether it's a nonprofit hospital, whether it's, you know, a scientist or whatever, where do they get the money and the research grants to do a lot of their work? A lot of it comes from, oh yeah, organizations like the NIH, you know, the government funding, et cetera. So if you're going against the tide of these government mandates, what happens? You get crushed. People are telling me internally at Southwest Airlines that part of the problem is their CEO. He's like, you know, I think they got a government bailout. I think it was around like $25 billion, some insane amount of money, right? Just in terms of the airlines. So airlines who got bailed out, right? What are they, where is their obligation? Is it with the customer? Is it with personal freedom? And by the way, if the government through this new stimulus / boondoggle bill, if that goes through, you know, so-called infrastructure, then there's more money set aside. So if they get squeezed because people walk out and quit their jobs, their attitude is they're going to have enough money to replace that and then some. So it's really a calculated gamble. And I don't think they're taking into account the frustration of the travelers and the fact that when we look at airlines and we look at the cascading effect that has and how pissed off people are, there's the ones who scream loudest, like on Twitter. I mean, I'll bet you 85% of those jackasses don't have, and that's technically, I think I can say that on national TV these days. So I don't know if that works.
No.
But
We'll let jackass slide because it is a barnyard animal. So
yeah, exactly. So, you know, so they've got an attitude, you know, now I lost my train of thought, but anyway, bringing it back. I think that 2022, if people keep rising up, like the Southwest folks who aren't staffing the, you know, the ticket counters, they're not staffing, you know, they're not flying the planes, they're not, you know, staffing, you know, as flight attendants on the planes. More and more this happens, money talks. And at some point in time, they're going to say, whoa, because I have rumors, I have contacts at United who's done this mandate and, oh, so 59% to 99%, according to Biden, we went from 59% vaccinated at United to 99% vaccinated at United in just a couple of months. How'd that happen? Well, did people just up and quit? Did they take early retirement? You know, you can get rid of a lot of people and improve your overall vaccination rate because you get rid of the people that aren't going to, you know, take a forced vaccination. That's not a good thing. But then there's a lot of people that still haven't gotten vaccinated. I expect them to walk out. I expect them to say, you know what? No job is worth being dictated to by a corporation as to my medical treatment. So if my doctor here says I don't need it, one of the folks that treated me at Sloan Kettering says you don't need it. I don't care what the overall policy is. I'm not getting it. I'm just not. I'm not getting it. So that's what we're faced with.
And that's the other thing. The whole natural immunity argument. You know, it's just like, why would you get a vaccine if you've already had what you vaccinated? I never got the chickenpox vaccine. Do you know why? I got the chickenpox. I gave it to 20 of my classmates too in first grade way back.
They used to have chickenpox parties. I
remember that. I ended up having a party without even knowing it in my first grade class. But yeah, mumps. I don't need a mump shot. Why? Because I got the mumps. German measles.
But let's ask yourself this.
Shots. I got the German measles.
But hold on. Forget all that, because some people say, you know what? You've had to get vaccinated for lots of things, you know, in your lifetime. So I posed back to some moron on social media. I said, okay, please name a single vaccine in the last 100 years in this country that you have been forced to take as an adult. Please, just name one. Name one. I
And you're
can't
not
name,
forced even the 10-year, tetanus whooping cough
right. You don't
booster.
have to
You're
take
not
that.
forced to take that.
Right. Right.
I mean, the only time I was actually had to take a vaccine was, I think, was the Hep A or Hep B because I was going to China. But when you're going
That
to
was,
China, you might want to do that.
well, so here's the thing. What people fail to realize when they say we eradicated smallpox. Okay. Um,
That's an
just
entirely
for
different
any,
vaccine.
well, different, yeah, and something that does not go back and forth between animals and humans, right?
Right.
This
There are animal
does.
reservoirs with COVID. This is a true story.
Correct. So the problem is people are talking about eradicating something that can't be eradicated based on what we know scientifically for thousands of years. It cannot be eradicated. And so there's no vaccine that's going to completely eradicate COVID by any stretch. They told you if you got the vaccine, you wouldn't get seriously ill and you wouldn't spread it to other people. Okay, well, we're finding out from Israel and lots of places that that's not the case. Ask yourself what's going on in Singapore right now. I got banned on LinkedIn because the last thing I posted was, Singapore. And I said, Singapore is one of the most highly vaccinated countries in the entire world. Virtually everyone in Singapore that's eligible for vaccine has already gotten double jabbed. Okay? They just hit record cases, record, and deaths. So you ask yourself, okay, so if everybody's vaccinated and you're now a year removed from the peak a year ago, and you've now beaten that peak and you're above that peak, and there's a vaccine,
Yeah, there's a lot of
what am
things
I
that just don't
missing?
plain add up, and that's the thing.
Correct.
When it comes to science, things have to add up, and when they're not adding up, you need to question the science. And there are not enough people questioning the science or questioning the scientists. And I think that's how we have to sort of leave this and understand that yes, you can still travel to places. Yes, there may be hoops you have to jump through. Yes, you can choose to jump through the hoops or not, and you can still have enjoyable trips because there's still lots of this beautiful world out there that's ready to be explored. I think that's the biggest takeaway of all. And you can either fight it or you can either be complicit. And like I said, there are so many people out there that I shake my head when I see their posts on social media. I shake my head when I'm in conversation with them because again, it's merely a matter of choice. And you just have to make the right choice and the smart choice for you, not for anybody else. And again,
Correct. And if you're vaccinated and you think the vaccine works well and you want to wear a mask and you think the mask works, then why do you need to worry about whether the guy sitting next to you is vaccinated? It makes
it's
no
it,
sense.
it, it is unbelievable hyperbole, and it's so hypocritical. It's just unbelievable. Mark,
Well, yep.
we're gonna wrap it up, but it's always a pleasure to have you on the Walter's Wandering Travel podcast. You do have a podcast of your own. Do you want to just go ahead and give it a shout?
Sure. If you want to hear a string of curses and my off-color political humor, you could just check me out at Murphy Travels. That's the podcast, Murphy Travels. It's on all of the different platforms. So
And
look me up.
I have chuckled uproariously, and we know the use of those profanities is only profane to those who are prone to profanity or whatever. I don't know, but
So whatever. You know what? Again,
you
I'm
do a
not
good
changing.
job, and then you tell it like it is from your vantage point, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Without a doubt. And here's a final tip. If you are a travel advisor slash travel agent, my suggestion would be to figure out some key places where you know that personal freedom is celebrated. You can basically choose the states you send your clients to. Florida is wide open. You wouldn't think there's any issues going on down here because, frankly, all that news over the summer about Florida, they're killing people, DeSantis. Yeah, well, our numbers are down almost 85% today from August. So, yeah, you can go pound sand because the mainstream media, and by the way, I owned a media company, they said what? Oh, yeah, they're killing people down here. But now that we're down almost 85% in cases, while New York and other places are spiking, They're not talking about those cases. Oh, yeah, they're not coming back and correcting the record down here. So if you're a travel advisor, send people to places that support you. Don't support suppliers that don't support you and all of your customers. Don't support destinations that require things like vaccine passports. They're dropping vaccine passports in places like France. They've dropped them in Denmark. They've dropped them in Sweden. Or they've never instituted them, like in places like Sweden. And again, their outcomes are as good or better than anywhere else in the world. So chew on that a bit. And, your dollars should be supporting those who support you.
That's right, because money is best used where money is best received, and all of that. I mean, it's just
Yep.
if your money's treated better, then that's where you need to go. Mark, it's been a
Bingo.
pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Listen to his
Scott.
podcast, Murphy Travels. Make sure you always tune into my new editions of the Walters Wanderings Travel Podcast, wherever you get your podcasts. Take